every Star Destroyer in galactic history. The Republic's Venators, the Empire's Imperials, Darth Vader's 19,000-meter Executor, the First Order's Resurgent class, traces back to one company. And when the Empire fell and the New Republic moved to seize the shipyards, they didn't shut the company down. They spent weeks in a shooting war to capture it, forced its surrender, and then kept it running because they couldn't afford not to. That company was Kuat Drive Yards. And this is less a story about starships than about what happens when a single contractor becomes more essential than any government it serves. Their own advertising said it plainly. At Kuat Drive Yards, we're driven to excel. It's this uncompromising commitment to performance that has made us the largest military shipbuilding corporation in the universe. The remarkable thing about that line isn't the arrogance. It's that it ran under the Republic and remained accurate under the Empire. The company was founded in the early days of the Galactic Republic by a consortium of wealthy aristocratic families called the Ten. Human merchants from the core world of Kuat, who pooled resources, hired terraformers to reshape their home planet into a paradise, and built the first 6 of what would become a vast ring of orbital shipyard complexes. Then, they settled their internal disagreements by signing an agreement called the Inheritance Exemption, control that was perpetual, written into a private legal mechanism no Senate could dissolve, and no imperial decree could override. The physical scale of what they built matters here. The Kuat shipyards weren't a facility on the planet. They were a massive orbital structure that encircled the entire planet Kuat, a ring around a world that served as the production floor. Everything that rolled out of it, every wedge-shaped capital ship, every assault walker, every frigate delivered to whatever government happened to be in charge. All of it from one family-controlled facility, answering to nobody but its hereditary CEO, who held the title Kuat of Kuat. That title passed by inheritance alone. The head of the largest military shipbuilder in the galaxy was whoever the Kuat family said it was, protected by a legal mechanism they had written for themselves. By 500 BBY, KDY had driven its main competitor, Core Galaxy Systems, into bankruptcy through a combination of price wars and industrial espionage, then bought the wreckage and retired the name. By 200 BBY, the company was launching Procurator-class battlecruisers at 2,500 meters and selling them directly to wealthy core world sectors as private defense fleets. 20 years before the Clone Wars, the first Mandator-class Star Dreadnought, 8 kilometers long, rolled out of the ring and triggered a wave of orders from sectors wanting their own capital ships. KDY didn't wait for governments to come to it. It built ships its customers didn't know they needed until they saw the advertising. The first entry in KDY's Star Destroyer catalog proper appeared 22 BBY, days after the Battle of Geonosis kicked off the Clone Wars. The Venator-class Star Destroyer, 59 million credits per unit, was the first class of Star Destroyer manufactured by Kuat Drive Yards. Not one of the first. The first. Designer Lyra Blissex built it as a multi-role warship and an escort for larger battleships, carrying a far larger fighter complement than the Victory class. Over 1,000 Venators participated in the Battle of Coruscant. KDY's own marketing promoted them as the cause of most Republic victories. That's a claim made about a product during a war that product was fighting, and nobody successfully challenged it, because it was largely true. The Acclamator-class assault ships that landed clone troopers at Geonosis came from Rothana Heavy Engineering, a KDY subsidiary. The Victory-class Star Destroyer, which entered service around 20 BBY through a joint project with Rendili Star Drive called the Victor Initiative Project, was collaborative. Designer Walex Blissex led the Rendili effort, which produced the Victory specifically, while Lyra Blissex led KDY's parallel team on the Venator and Imperator designs. The Gladiator-class design came through Rendili during the Clone Wars and was handed over to KDY afterward, which converted it into a warship used to enforce the outer fringes of galactic society. The institutional irony of this era runs directly through KDY's corporate history. KDY had previously been part of the Techno-Union and cut those ties before the Clone Wars began. The Techno-Union, during the Clone Wars, backed the Separatists, aligned in practice with the enemy KDY's ships were fighting. KDY maintained its Republic loyalty and kept every contract. When an organization in your own corporate lineage is arming the opposition, and you're still winning the procurement competition, you've achieved a level of operational independence that no org chart can contain. According to legend sources, many of KDY's upper administrative executives were actively encouraging the conflict to continue. The Clone Wars were the largest shipbuilding contract in galactic history, and there are reasonable inferences to be drawn about what certain people in the building preferred. When Palpatine declared the Empire in 19 BBY, KDY made a deliberate choice. Because of their support for the Emperor, the company received the majority of contracts for building up the Imperial Navy. The Venator line slowed. The Imperator-class, later renamed the Imperial one, ramped up, built directly on the Venator's design. Then the fleet orders came in. At peak, the Imperial Navy fielded over 25,000 Imperial-class Star Destroyers. If Lockheed Martin, currently the world's largest defense contractor at $61.4 billion in U.S. government contracts, also supplied Russia's entire military fleet from the same factories, you'd be approaching the scale of what KDY represented for a single client under a single government. Grand Moff Tarkin articulated what KDY was actually selling better than any spec sheet. When citizens look at a Star Destroyer and then compare it to the craft which might be mustered to attack it, they have a tendency to dismiss such a notion as suicidal, rather than approach the problem tactically. KDY built a ship whose primary weapon was the psychological effect of being seen. The wedge shape concentrated maximum firepower forward, the silhouette narrowing to a point that carried threat in its geometry, a product decision KDY standardized across every generation of design. The Imperial II followed, refined but recognizably the same lineage. Then came the Executor-class Star Dreadnought, 19,000 meters, over 5,000 turbolasers and ion cannons, Darth Vader's personal flagship. KDY designed it. The construction of the lead ship was sent to Fondor shipyards, reportedly a deliberate move by Palpatine toward a company that had been attempting to maintain its independence from the Empire. KDY responded by starting a second executor simultaneously at its own yards. The Star Wars Death Star novel is direct about the result. 4 new superclass Star Destroyers that were currently rolling ponderously out of the Kuat drive yards. The Nebulon B escort frigate deserves its own moment. KDY designed it specifically for the Imperial Navy as a warship to protect convoys from rebel starfighters. The rebellion then captured enough of them that Nebulon Bs became their primary medical ships. The vessel at the end of The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke Skywalker receives his prosthetic hand, is a KDY design built to destroy people like Luke Skywalker, flying rebel colors as a hospital. There is no better single image for what Kuat drive yards actually was. KDY didn't build everything. To understand the monopoly's real scope, you need to know where it ended. The Interdictor-class Star Destroyer, in Legends continuity at minimum, was a Sinar Fleet Systems product. Sinar's primary business was the TIE Fighter. Their capital ship catalog ran to the Interdictor line and a range of smaller cruisers, filling a different procurement category rather than competing for mainline destroyer contracts. Rendili Stardrive co-built the Victory class and maintained their own cruiser range through the Clone Wars, but they didn't challenge KDY's dominance in the mainline destroyer category after the transition to Empire. Fondor shipyards completed the lead executor, 1 ship, 1 contract, not a product line. The exceptions are real. They're also narrow, specifically scoped, and remarkable precisely because they're so rare. Every class that defined what a Star Destroyer meant, the ships that gave rise to the franchise's most iconic visual, came from KDY or its subsidiaries. The gaps in the monopoly are what prove its size. KDY's catalog ran deeper than the famous classes. The Victory class produced the Victory I and Victory II variants, with later Victory III configurations extending the design into secondary Imperial roles across subsequent decades. The Mandator line ran through multiple dreadnought iterations across centuries. The Allegiance class appears in KDY's product references as part of a catalog range that extended well beyond the headline ships. These aren't the showcase products. They're the evidence that KDY wasn't just building icons. It was filling every tier of capital military demand across multiple governments and multiple centuries, from the same ring above the same planet. The relationship between KDY and the governments it served wasn't what it appeared to be from the outside. In the centuries before the Clone Wars, KDY was using advertising campaigns to sell Star Destroyers directly to senators from wealthy core world sectors for private defense fleets, bypassing the Republic's central procurement entirely. The company had 2 members on the Trade Federation Directorate. It was a founding sponsor of the Corporate Sector Authority, which gave it the right to advertise and sell products in an entirely separate trade jurisdiction. KDY wasn't dependent on any single government for its revenue. It had diversified its clients to include governments, sectors, corporations, and the private military interests operating beneath and alongside formal state power. When the empire formed, KDY chose to back it and was rewarded with near-exclusive naval contracts. The calculation the company was always making was the same one: stay valuable enough to every possible winner that no winner can afford to eliminate you. There's a real-world company this description fits almost perfectly. The Krupp Arms Factory opened in Essen, Germany in 1587. By 1912, more than 3 centuries later, it was selling weapons to 52 countries simultaneously and was the single largest supplier to the Imperial German Army. Before World War I, Krupp maintained patent-sharing agreements with British manufacturer Vickers. When Germany and Britain began fighting each other in 1914, Vickers continued paying royalties to Krupp. One combatant was funding the other's arms manufacturer through intellectual property law, and both parties let it continue because the commercial relationship predated the war. After Germany lost, the Treaty of Versailles prohibited German weapons production. Krupp spent several years building railway cars. Then, in 1921, the company purchased the Swedish arms manufacturer Bofors as a front company and moved rearmament work through Swiss and Swedish facilities, neatly sidestepping the treaty. When Hitler visited the Krupp works in 1934, he declared he wanted German boys to be as hard as Krupp steel. The company had survived a world war, a national collapse, and a peace treaty specifically designed to defang it, and transitioned smoothly into supplying the next regime's military buildup. After World War II, Alfred Krupp was convicted at Nuremberg for using forced labor. He was sentenced, then released in 1953, 8 years after the war ended, and resumed management of the company. Krupp was never dissolved. It eventually merged with Thyssen to become Thyssen-Krupp, one of Germany's largest industrial conglomerates today. 400 years, multiple wars, a war crimes conviction. The company outlasted every government it served, not because it resisted them, because it was too useful to eliminate. That's KDY. Different galaxy, same mechanism. After the Battle of Endor in 4 ABY, one of the New Republic's first major military objectives was the Kuat drive yards. Not Coruscant, not a Death Star construction site. The shipyard. In 5 ABY, Admiral G.L. Akbar and Commodore Kirsta Agate led the New Republic Defense Fleet into a battle for the orbital ring that lasted multiple weeks. B-Wing Blade Squadron flew bombing runs against the structure itself, destroying fuel depots, ammo dumps, and the Imperial Command Hub. The defending Kuwati fleet included at least 17 Star Destroyers, AT-AT walkers, and vintage ATTE walkers operated inside the orbital shipyard structure, fighting over production facilities that were still running. Imperial Governor Moff Paulus Maxim and the guild head of Kuat drive yards surrendered to the New Republic. Then the New Republic kept it running. That's the accurate version of the story. KDY wasn't too powerful to conquer. The New Republic won the battle. But it was too valuable to dismantle. The most advanced ship production infrastructure in known space was something a nascent government, trying to stabilize a galaxy, couldn't afford to turn off. Whatever restructuring followed, some accounts suggest KDY was broken into smaller subsidiaries to prevent the same concentration of power from reconcentrating. The productive capacity stayed operational. The company that had built the symbols of the regime the rebellion spent decades destroying survived the rebellion winning. The institutional lineage restructured into Kuat Intrala Engineering. That successor entity built the Resurgent-class Star Destroyer for the First Order. 2,900 meters long, over 1,500 turbolasers and ion cannons, weapons powered by Kyber focusing crystals, with faster recharge rates than Imperial models. Constructed in secret, in violation of the Galactic Concordance's limits on First Order military expansion. The Finalizer, the command resurgent assigned to Kylo Ren and General Hux, descended from the same corporate family that had produced Venators for the Clone Wars. The Galactic Republic, the Galactic Empire. The New Republic's inherited production capacity. The First Order's clandestine fleet. One corporate bloodline connects all of them. The inheritance exemption held through all of it. The same family, the same ring above the same planet, producing the same product line for whoever came next. Every government in galactic history needed KDY more than KDY needed them. The question left standing is, who actually ran the galaxy? The company that built the weapons of every regime understood the answer. The governments that thought they were in charge mostly didn't. Subscribe for more stories like this.